by taking a look at the day's headlines. Time to stump up the cash. US President Donald Trump takes an indirect pop at South Korea, accusing, quote, wealthy countries of refusing to pay a fair amount for US military protection. Wrapping up a busy few days of diplomacy focused on Southeast Asia. President Moon Jae-in will meet his Malaysian counterpart soon. He held a one-on-one with the Prime Minister of Vietnam on Wednesday. Plus, picking up the pieces, Albania counts the human cost of the most powerful earthquake to hit Europe's poorest country in 4 decades. Now, US President Donald Trump was on the campaign trail yet again this week, this time hitting Florida, a swing state critical to his 2020 re-election bid. During a speech to tens of thousands of his supporters, Trump touched upon Seoul's burden of defense cost sharing with what he called wealthy nations, seemingly in a nod to South Korea. Jaein starts us off.
Dubbed a homecoming rally, U.S. President Donald Trump made his first visit to Florida on Tuesday, since officially changing his residence last month from Trump Tower in New York to his Mar-a-Lago resort in Palm Beach. Among the many topics that came up was the issue of defense cost sharing. Explaining he's the president of the United States, not the president of the world, Trump said Washington is shouldering too much of the burden defending countries he considers wealthy. While he did not specifically mention South Korea, his comments come as Seoul and Washington have been locked in tough negotiations over the cost of stationing 28,500 American troops on the Korean Peninsula, with the two sides poles apart on the numbers. President Trump also criticized previous U.S. administrations for wasting too much of American taxpayers' money on what he called delusional global projects, seemingly referring to military costs overseas. He added the money should be used to help the middle class and America's manufacturing sector. It remains to be seen how President Trump's remarks will impact the ongoing defense cost-sharing negotiations between Seoul and Washington. 이승재, Arirang News.
The United States plans to provide government funding to address the dire human rights situation in North Korea and promote access to information in the North. The U.S. State Department announced that it will offer funding of up to $3 million to select organizations. The support is for those that help outside information get into the regime through, for example, radio broadcasts, contents that appeal to ordinary North Koreans, or a completely new type of media. The department is also looking for projects that record the regime's human rights abuses through an online database or reports. South Korea and Japan scrambled fighter jets last night after 2 Russian strategic bombers flew over the waters in the East Sea. Russia's defense ministry said on Wednesday that the 2 long-range missile bombers flew over what it cited as the Sea of Japan and the Yellow Sea for over 10 hours, during which South Korea's F-15 and F-16 jets and 1 Japanese fighter were scrambled to join them. The ministry added the Russian Air Force has been operating regularly without violating international law. Now, it's not yet clear whether the Russian aircraft enters Korea's Air Defense Identification Zone, or CADITS as it's more commonly known. The Russian Air Force has breached the CADITS several times recently, with the last case happening in October. Now, President Moon Jae-in concludes his sideline one-on-ones today with each leader of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations that have been in South Korea for the recently concluded 2019 ASEAN Republic of Korea Commemorative Summit. President Moon will meet Malaysia's Prime Minister at the top office in the coming hours. They're expected to discuss boosting bilateral exchanges as well as ways to cooperate in the era of the 4th Industrial Revolution, such as areas like smart cities. Moon and Mahathir bin Mohamad are also set to discuss the final details for the conclusion of a South Korea-Malaysia free trade deal. So, arriving back in Seoul from Busan, President Moon held a summit on Wednesday with the Prime Minister of Vietnam. Shin Se-min has this report.
The leaders of South Korea and Vietnam held one-on-one talks in Seoul following the multilateral ASEAN and Mekong summits in Busan. During their bilateral summit meeting on Wednesday evening, President Moon Jae-in asked Vietnamese Prime Minister Nguyen Xuan Phuc to take a constructive role in the Korean peace process as Vietnam takes the chair of the ASEAN bloc next year. The presidential office of Cheong Wa Dae said that President Moon, while briefing the visiting Vietnamese PM on his administration's peace drive on the Korean peninsula, also requested for joint Seoul-Hanoi efforts to build peace and prosperity in the region and around the world. Vietnam had previously played a significant role in providing a platform for nuclear talks to continue as it hosted the second North Korea-U.S. summit earlier this year. With Vietnam also slated to serve as a non-permanent member of the UNSC through 2021, Vietnamese leader reportedly expressed its commitment to keen attention and an active role in relation to the Korean peninsula. On top of that, the leaders also saw eye to eye on the economic front.
올해 양국은 전략적 협력 동반자 관계 10주년을 맞습니다. 베트남의 산업국가 목표와 한국의 신남방 정책의 시너지 효과를 한 차원 더 높여나가길 바랍니다.
Our two nations are partners that trust each other and cooperate on strategic levels. We are also close friends. Vietnam also hopes to upgrade our strategic cooperative partnership.
The two leaders also agreed on expanding investment in IT, industrial materials, and financial services while hoping to broaden the scope of official development assistance in the public administration's front. Just as the boom of the Vietnamese national soccer team led by South Korean coach Park Hang-seo, President Moon expressed hope that the two nations' synergy effect is further amplified in their future bilateral relations. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
So South Korea and the ASEAN member states have now wrapped up their summit, which happened in Busan, which was a chance for both sides to explore the potential they have for economic growth and development based on Southeast Asia's abundant natural and human resources. Our Hong Yu takes a look back at what was accomplished during the summit.
Through the commemorative summit, 3 declarations have been signed promising peace and co-prosperity. South Korea and ASEAN came up with a common blueprint for their next 30 years of trade, investment, and human resource exchanges. And with the Mekong-Han River Declaration signed on Wednesday, South Korea and the 5 Mekong countries hope to establish their own partnership for people, prosperity, and peace. South Korea is committed to helping develop rural areas in the Mekong region through various cooperative projects. Using Korea's Economic Development Cooperation Fund, it plans to promote regional connectivity by advancing infrastructure in the Mekong region. ICT-driven projects are planned to help bring the region a step closer to the digital economy. The two parties will also stimulate deeper interaction between small and medium-sized enterprises and startup companies to allow efficient business and create investment opportunities across the region. Through the diplomatic events that took place in Busan, South Korea could secure solid support from ASEAN for the new Southern policy that will help develop both regions over the next 30 years. Now, with help from ASEAN as well as companies and experts from the region, the government plans to promote the new Southern Policy 2.0 starting from 2021. Hong Yu, Arirang News, Busan.
Now, over the past 3 days, we've been bringing you extensive coverage of this year's ASEAN-Korea summit. So we thought we'd take a look back at the summit through a different angle rather than what we think about here in South Korea. This time through the eyes of media outlets from Southeast Asia who made the trip over to Busan. Kim Bok-yeon reports.
Hosting of the commemorative summit appears to have been a success in the eyes of the foreign media.
The security and the usherates and other personnel are so accommodating that they attend to every concern and to every need of delegates, of media, and those who are part of this summit. So if I'm gonna rate this preparation, if I'm gonna rate this kind of hosting, I think I'm gonna consider it as an all-kill performance or an all-kill preparation.
Media outlets from ASEAN countries have reported on how strengthening ties with South Korea could be an opportunity for their own countries to grow further. According to the Jakarta Post, Indonesian President Joko Widodo was interested in South Korea's successful urban development. He visited Busan's Kamcheon Cultural Village and ordered officials to use the village as a model of urban rehabilitation. Calling the village an inspiration, the president wanted to transform rundown districts in Indonesia into tourist attractions. Malaysian media outlet Malay Mail also emphasized the importance of connectivity between South Korea and Malaysia by quoting the country's prime minister. It said South Korea, which possesses the required expertise in infrastructure construction and economic expansion, could be a model for ASEAN countries. Technology was also an important area Southeast Asian countries were interested in.
We saw President Moon showing off high-tech products, Samsung products, products of other companies, robotic products, the wonders of the high-tech age to these leaders of these countries to show what could be done here and what they could export to Southeast Asia.
Vietnam News, a daily English language newspaper, quoted the Prime Minister of Vietnam, stressing how he would like to encourage investors in Seoul to expand their investment, especially in the fields of electronics, energy technology, and smart cities, further enabling South Korea to transfer new technologies to Vietnam. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News, Busan.
Now, in other news, U.S. economic growth picked up slightly in the third quarter instead of slowing as initially forecast. In its second estimate, GDP growth was revised up to 2.1% from the previous forecast of 1.9%. So, in this release of its estimate for third quarter GDP on Wednesday, the U.S. Commerce Department cited a stronger pace of inventory accumulation and a less steep decline in business investment as the reason behind the revision. However, growth in consumer spending, which accounts for more than 2/3 of U.S. economic activity, was down, only 2.9%. Now, business sentiment for South Korean firms improved slightly this month thanks to increasing sales, but the figures are still far below the benchmark of 100. Data from the Bank of Korea showed on Thursday that the business survey index for November came in at 74 for all industries, edging up just 1 point on month. Tech firms, including electronic companies, showed more optimism thanks to an increase in semiconductor sales. The business outlook for December was 73 for all industries, with more manufacturers concerned about sluggish consumption and exports in the final month of 2019. Now, more bad news for a country with the lowest birth rate, one of them anyway, in the entire world. The number of births here in South Korea hit a record low yet again in the third quarter. The total fertility rate also hit an unprecedented low. So it isn't looking good at all. Yoon Jung-min has his report.
The birth rate in South Korea fell again to its lowest level in the third quarter of this year, adding concerns over the shrinking population. Statistics Korea said on Wednesday that a total of around 73,000 babies were born from July to September, down some 8% on year. It's the lowest number for the third quarter since data was first collected in 1981. The total fertility rate, which represents the number of children that a female is expected to have in her lifetime, came at just 0.88 during the same period. It's the second straight year that the fertility rate has gone below 1, and also the lowest number for the third quarter since data was first compiled in 2008. Experts say a fertility rate of at least 2.1 is needed to sustain the population. The latest figures could be a signal of inevitable demographic changes in Korean society, which has fueled discussions on issues of retirement extension or welfare expenses. The number of marriages was also down 0.9% from a year earlier to some 53,000 for the July to September period. The number of divorces went up some 4% to over 27,000 during the same period. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Now, the festive spirit is slowly creeping up on us now, and it's this time of year when you see the Salvation Army take to the streets, raising money for those in need, a wonderful cause indeed. And this year, the Salvation Army in Korea is promoting the spirit of giving in a smarter way. Lee Kyung-eun reports.
The red, iconic Salvation Army pod has become a symbol of the season, with many people knowing the feeling of taking money out of their pocket and dropping it in the pod on a cold winter day. But this year in central Seoul, the pods are a little bit different.
The Salvation Army Korea territory has introduced the so-called Smart Charity Pod. It allows you to make a donation by just one touch of your card.
Installing the Smart Pod for the first time in Seoul Plaza on Wednesday, the Salvation Army said it is adopting the charity culture to suit people's changing lifestyles.
It will help reach people who are more used to cards and online payments than cash. We are first distributing 100 pots across the city this year, but plan to spread them across the whole nation by next year.
The new device also takes transportation cards or online payment systems like ZeroPay or NaverPay. It is a collaboration between the Korean Salvation Army and the local branch of German cookware company Fissler, which has been providing and repairing the pods since 2004. Lately, they've been working together to transform the traditional charity campaign into a more fun and interactive activity. And this year, their new high-tech pod not only makes the donation process convenient, but also more interesting.
I've always participated in the campaign with cash, so first of all, it feels very new, and it also makes donations more fun.
Also for this year, the Salvation Army has introduced the Hope Train, which will offer warm shelter for citizens while sending people the message that the spirit of giving will keep moving forward. Located in one of the busiest areas in the city, the Salvation Army's new project will give people a chance to think about their neighbors in need and what they can do to help. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
An earthquake described as the deadliest to hit Albania in almost a century has completely devastated large parts of Europe's poorest country. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Kim Dami. So Dami, fill us in on the rescue operation thus far.
Mark, just a day after Tuesday's deadly earthquake, Albania has declared a state of emergency. According to Reuters, a 6.4 magnitude tremor has left at least 29 people dead so far, on top of the over 650 people injured. Among them, 32 people are in critical condition. Most of the victims were from the coastal city Durrës and the regions near the city, which were close to the epicenter. The death toll is expected to rise as many residents are feared trapped in the rubble of collapsed buildings. In fact, the death toll may surpass the 40 recorded during the 1979 earthquake. The country marked a national day of mourning on Wednesday and has canceled all events celebrating its Independence Day scheduled on Thursday and Friday. Meanwhile, rescue and recovery efforts continue. In addition to some 4,000 rescue workers, including military police, 200 professional rescuers from neighboring countries like Italy, France, Romania, and Turkey have joined local emergency crews. As a 5.3 magnitude aftershock happened on Wednesday afternoon, the country remains fearful. Many Albanians who lost their homes have been sleeping in hundreds of tents laid out in gyms and sports fields. The now infamous Boeing 737 MAX has hit a new obstacle as the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration says it'll have to approve every Boeing 737 MAX before delivery to airlines. In a letter to Boeing this week, the regulator said the new inspection is to serve the public interest and safety in air commerce. Previously, Boeing had authorization to perform routine pre-delivery safety checks by itself. The Boeing 737 MAX was grounded in around 40 countries after two crashes that left hundreds of people dead. As Thanksgiving nears, a so-called bomb cyclone is sweeping across America's west coast. The U.S. National Weather Service warned on Wednesday that a bomb cyclone was affecting several states, including Minnesota, South Dakota, Iowa, at a speed of 120 kilometers an hour. Bomb cyclone is a rapidly strengthening winter storm caused by a precipitous drop in atmospheric pressure. Oregon's Transportation Department has closed stretches of highways, and in Colorado, a truck crash left one person dead. Some parts of Minnesota saw 30 centimeters of snow on Wednesday morning alone.
Good morning. We had another cold start to the day, and the wind chill is making it feel even colder than the actual temperatures. However, daily highs will be a couple notches higher than yesterday, and a similar weather pattern will stay with us through Saturday. It has been snowing in mountainous regions in Gangwon-do province. In fact, in Mi시령, saw more than 10 centimeters of snowfall so far, and the rest of the East Coast regions have been seeing some showers. Mountainous regions in Gangwon-do province are under a heavy snow advisory and should expect up to 20 centimeters more snow through tonight, while the East Coast will see 5 to 30 millimeters of rainfall. Everywhere except the East Coast will be under sunny skies, and daily highs will range from 9 to 13 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Nationwide rain on the first day of December will bring much colder conditions to the country, so it is really time now to prepare for the winter season. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all the news and weather we have for now. Stay tuned to Arirang TV. We'll have our next newscast coming up at noon Korea time. If you want to catch up on more of the goings on here in South Korea, you can always check out our website, arirang.com/news. Until next time, goodbye.